Sherri, it's great to be with you. Just want to talk with you a little bit and pick at your wisdom and experience, and then talk a little bit about how the brain science confirms the good stuff that you're doing. I want to start off by talking a little bit about your book, Rooted to Rise, which has been such a blessing to me. In fact, I have it here. And it really is full of brain science. And I don't know when you wrote it if you realize that, but all of us, our brain forms with different neural connections from an early age. And the associations we have with people and with events is what helps to make us who we are and make our brain the way it is. And so you have really given us some insight in this book into how your brain was formed and the different connections that have helped make you who you are. And I was thinking about that and just thinking about how all the different players we get to coach come with a book. They come with all these different life experiences that help shape who they are. And wouldn't it be good if you could read their book before you started coaching them?
Would it ever?
Yeah. And that's really one of the challenges, isn't it? To coach players, they're more than just physical athletes. So maybe talk about, for just a minute, if you would, some of the ways in which you have been able to identify traits in players or things that need developed in players, maybe even how you react to the different books they bring. Anything like that pops out to you and that we could talk about for a little bit?
Sure. I think as a college recruiter, one of the biggest indicators for us, where we got a lot of our information about the book that a player comes with, was through home visits. And I hated it that later in my career, those became less prevalent because of the early signing period. People made decisions, and therefore you didn't have those really informational time periods with kids. But what you found out in a home visit was how a young person interacts with their parents. It speaks a lot to their understanding of authority figures, their understanding of respect, their experience with unconditional love, the way the parent speaks to the young person. There are a lot of dynamics that go on inside of a home that simply by breaking bread and spending a meal with someone, you get some insights into what might be some raw spots and some hot spots and some underdeveloped areas and some value systems. And all of that becomes incredibly important when that student athlete arrives on your campus, and you're responsible not only for helping them grow, but also helping them perform at the maximum level. So it's motivation, it's understanding, it's navigation of that new life. And those things are critical for coaches to understand.
I've watched the wise coaches, the successful coaches, be able to adjust the way they coach different players. There's not one framework that works for every player.
Yeah, I used to say we treat them equally, but not the same. And that's because different players need different things. Many times have told at clinics as a high school coach. I had a kid, Stacy Hansmeyer, who was a great player, went on to play at the University of Connecticut. And I could yell at her in a way that I could never talk to someone else on the team, and not in a demeaning way, but in a very, you're better than that. You can do that. And if I had said that to maybe another player on the team, it would have crushed them and they wouldn't have been able to move forward. And so you have to learn how to talk to each one of those players in a way that they can hear you best. And typically there's a player in your gym, on your team, whether it's the field, the court, whatever it is, who can help you with that messaging. A strong, sometimes we name them captain, but a strong player who has good relationships. And by watching them as a coach, you can learn a lot about how to communicate with players on your team.
Maybe you could think about an experience where a player over time changed, and all of a sudden the way you had been able to motivate them, it wasn't the same. You think of any experiences like that?
Lots of experiences. The one that immediately popped into my head when you asked that question, recruited a point guard out of St. Louis, Deanna Jackson, who went on to be a great point guard for us and is now the head coach at UMKC. Just has had a remarkable career, was an assistant coach at Mississippi State and then at Texas. She's just had a remarkable playing career and coaching career. But at Dee's home visit, I would say if she made eye contact once, it was for 2 seconds, and that's it. Everything was to the floor. She was very quiet. At the end of the home visit, I asked her if she had any questions, if there was anything at all. And she asked me one question: if she could wear her tall socks. She wore tall socks with stripes around the top, and nobody did that at that time. And I said, honey, if you come to Oklahoma, you can wear whatever kind of socks you want. It'll be fine. And that was it. That was the extent of our dialogue in her living room. Barbara and I, her mom and I, talked a lot. But this was this kid, this shy introvert who wanted to be herself and yet wanted to fit in and wanted to please. And the socks were kind of an extension of all that, a pretty passive one. But she came to Oklahoma and grew and grew. She was a freshman on our first Final Four team, and she was our sixth man. And those older guys did such a great job of just sort of giving her confidence a place to grow. They just kind of held her there and let her become who she was. By the time she was a senior, she led the gym. She controlled the games. She was in charge of issues in the locker room. She was always quiet in terms of she's not going to run in the room and everybody look at me, I'm here. But she said what needed to be said in a way that other people could hear it. And she became a very, very impactful leader, not just in our gym and on our team, but for our program and in future recruiting efforts. And it was an extrapolation of her growth over 4 years, just watching her get better and better and better and closer and closer and closer to the person that she wanted to be.
Yeah, that's great. And sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes players will experience a negative event in their home or in their social life, and they bring that to the table or to the court as well. And as coaches, if we're all of a sudden they react in a way and we're like, what's going on? And sometimes it's getting behind that and seeing really what's happened as a part of that.
Oh, there's no question. We used to have bi-weekly meetings with all of our extended staff at the university. So that's nutrition, that's strength training, that's academic services, that's everything, every sports information, everybody who touched our players. And we did those for communicative purposes, obviously, so that all the hands knew what the other was doing. But the great benefit from that was we got information about our players. And so there might be a student athlete might be acting out with the academic advisor. She might be fighting her and she hadn't fought her in the past. And maybe we hadn't seen that on the court yet, but that would allow us to use our relationship to try to get to the root cause of that. Sometimes athletes would tell trainers things that they won't tell coaches or academic advisors or teachers. And our trainer could help us understand that something's going on outside the court. This is not exactly what it appears to be. And that kind of information helped us coach much better. I wish we'd have done it sooner. I wish we would have figured that out earlier instead of sometimes as coaches, we felt like we were trying to unravel something that we couldn't find the edges to. We knew something was going on, but we couldn't figure out what it was. And that's sometimes a very difficult thing to ascertain, especially if a kid is not willing to open up and be honest about it.
I was talking to a former college player recently, and he was telling me about an event in his life that the last person he wanted to tell was his coach, because that was what he cared about the most.
Yeah.
He cared about it not affecting his playing time, not affecting his relationship with his coach. And so he kept something secret from his coach where the coach would have helped him. But that's that value of that relationship, how much they value it.